Hi, everybody. This is Pasha Kane from Raise the Bar in Real Estate. And I'm so excited about our next guest, Tim Young from Lawyers Title. Now, Lawyers Title is a title company, and I think probably most people are familiar with or have heard of title. But there is a division called Building Services, which Tim Young runs, which there is such a breadth of like resources at title companies. And I had the pleasure of hearing Tim Young speak, gosh, about like 6 months ago. And I was just blown away with the level of knowledge that he had. And I just was so excited to get him to agree to come and talk to us today because I really truly believe you'll see a lot of value in the information he's going to share. And more importantly, how can you use that in your real estate transaction? So, Tim, thank you so much for
Oh,
being on the show. Again, you're
good to be
just
here.
the
Thanks for having me.
highlight. I'm sure we'll have you back again because I know we won't even be able to scratch the surface
Yeah.
today. Just for the listeners, Tim has over 30 years experience in real estate and building, development, investing. So, yeah, I'll let you kind of take it from there, Tim. Please introduce yourself and just, yeah, tell us how you got into real estate.
Yeah, great introduction. Thank you. You know, uh, my mom was a real estate broker. And so going through high school and such, I had this stuff around me all the time. And I really had no interest in getting real estate. My real passion was to get into the motion picture industry, the business end of it. And just by happenstance, I ended up at Washington County in the planning division. And got that time there and planning building division and got invested in PERS and decided it was time to use that as an education and parlay that into something else. We got into single family as well as attached house subdivisions and just kept going from there. I take a different perspective to developing. I like the what makes it tick, and understanding the state laws and the local ordinances and things like that. Obviously, my time spent in the saddle with the county helped understand that basic architecture that comes about with the zoning ordinances and things. And so, um, and was very fortunate to have a lot of really good developers in the past share that knowledge. I think that's something that this industry lacks. That people are unwilling to share the knowledge because their fear of training their competitor, if you will. I've found the opposite to that. I found that sharing the knowledge actually helps uh, create a dynamic within everybody where it's a win-win. And so, yeah, spent a lot of time doing this stuff. Was helped with some legislation. Continue to work on things like right now, especially when it comes to middle housing as a new topic that's been talked about. Um, in talking to Pasha, I think one of the things that I find where I'll put my title guy hat on. Like she said, I run a department that manages the component that supports the builder, developer, investor, broker, anybody who's involved in some sort of real estate development or investment. Um, One of the challenges that I see that happens is that people just not knowing what questions to ask is a big one, right? You don't know what you don't know, and it's not out of naivety. It's just a different aspect. Um, and so, um, what I find is there are people who will go in and buy a piece of property and find themselves over their skis, where they just, they find that there's some requirements they don't understand, they don't know, and then find out that the property in some cases is not developable, or if it is, it's absolutely cost prohibitive to do so. Um, I heard a saying many years ago, you make your money when you buy, not when you sell. And I think that's so true that because of doing that proper due diligence and doing that proper understanding of what makes the property tick, there's a component that I can't answer is, and I get this question a lot, is it worth it? You know,
Mm.
that's subjective, right? There's guys that will get out of bed for a few bucks. That'll be me, and there's guys that won't get out of bed if they don't make $1 million. But there's also just the folks that are trying to just find a piece of property and build their home
Yeah.
and put that together. And like I said, if you don't know, you don't know what you don't know. And I've seen so many times where somebody goes in, puts a piece of property under contract, or puts it, buys the thing, and then goes, "Let's figure it out now." Um, our approach is different. Obviously, I work for a title insurance company, and they brought me on to have somebody with this perspective on their payroll, so that for our clients, I can step in and say, okay, here's what you have. Here are some of the questions that I'll have some of the answers. May not have all the answers, but at least have the understanding where we need to go. And that's a bigger part of saying, okay, we need to understand these components about the environmental or utilities or transportation requirements, to at least be able to make a comprehensive decision to say, okay, is this worth the hassle,
Mhm.
and the time that I have? You know, there are pieces of property that are not developable. There are some that are developable, but to what scale and what cost and disciplines and things like that, that make it a viable property. Also, there are land use zonings out there that are extremely restrictive out
Mhm.
there. That are, say, the forest or farm properties that first and foremost you got to farm them or forest them. Houses are kind of an afterthought to that. So there are provisions in those codes that allow you to build, but highly restrictive, and it's an 8-hour conversation all in one. I think the bigger thing is I tell people, I said, listen, there's no crazy question when it comes to this stuff, especially when you're buying land. I know when Pasha and I met, I was talking about buying land, infill land, doing infill development, and really checking those boxes of those items they need to address across the board, and bring the crazy questions, and connect with Pasha, and I'd be happy to take some time to at least help give direction. Like I said, I may not have all the answers because those may be needed to have the staff. I mean, it's something that's interpretation to a county or city staff person. I can't answer that. But the other part is taking resources that I have and I've been able to aggregate over the years and connecting people to the professionals that get stuff done. And one of the challenges I find when somebody goes and they go to get a project, and I think the hard part, especially if somebody we'll pick land development, if you're subdividing a piece of property or dividing a piece of land, partitioning a piece of land, um, it can get out of control pretty good because you've got some planning components, some engineering components, some survey components, and where you can go hire somebody as an individual surveyor, individual planning consultant, individual engineer. But if it's your first rodeo, you are the hub of continuity and the voice of reason within it all. And if you don't know how to manage that, it can get away from you.
Mhm.
Uh, then there's the option of design houses where they have all inclusive, where the engineering, survey, planning, design, the whole thing's under one roof. Um, they're not always the cheapest. Like I said, the one-off guys can be probably a better buy. The one-stop shops that they have everything, you'll pay a little more. But what I find is that by trying to save some money by kind of picking and stepping over dollars to pick up cents, where you're, especially when you're, say, for developing, your carrying costs can exceed what you would have paid in the first time. There's no wrong answer. I mean, it's subjective. That's what a person's bandwidth can handle. But in my role in title company, it's to here to kind of help keep that keep that process going. What does it mean? What do you say? All that kind of fun stuff. It's been great. It's been a real benefit. We've grown the company because of it.
Mhm.
And our market share in new construction has gone up, which is fun to see when you come in. So, yeah,
Great.
that's a big part. Is really when you're buying that land, is really making sure you check those correct boxes because it can really mess you up.
Yeah. Well, that was as everybody can see, a very comprehensive, answer because there is a lot of complexity to real estate. And, um, you know, Tim, you're definitely leading into some of these ideas, like if somebody wants to maybe do new construction or if they're looking
Mhm.
at land to develop, if you are a novice, there it can be super overwhelming, kind of to how to analyze a parcel, how to even understand the zoning, how to maybe divide a lot, and what are your options? And we maybe somebody doesn't want to even broach that topic because it's too overwhelming and too complex. And I think that's why I love what you're offering, Tim, is because the services that are, there through our title companies and you being the head of that really is a great resource for us to tap into and not feel so overwhelmed and know you have a partner um, to kind of bounce ideas and just kind of, yeah, kind of steer you in the right direction. So,
That's a great point. You're right. You think about, especially you look at the scale, and you look at the scale of real estate investment or real estate development. There's a couple, there's a lot of different options, right? I mean, just taking a piece of land and putting a home on it. There's a lot of moving parts to that, and then you start dividing them up, and you start different product types and things like that. And you don't know where to start, you don't know where to end. Where do you go? Where are my resources? It's kind of, I always use the analogy of building a shoe. You wake up
mhm.
one morning, say you want to build a shoe. It's like, where do you start? Am I building a track shoe or a dress shoe? Where do I go? How's it designed? All those moving parts, and it's not rocket science. If I figured it out, most people can.
No, you've got 30
But
years under your belt.
like I said, well, I've been very fortunate. I had guys that took the time with me to just kind of sit down and put into layman's terms what this stuff means. There's a lot of acronyms and things like that that get thrown around, and so I've been in meetings where we're speaking the language and people are just looking and going, what are you guys talking about? It's almost like watching an episode of ER where they're naming all these things. And I had friends that were doctors and we watched the show together, and I'm like, I was absolutely lost, and they're following the conversation. I was not. So that definitely helps about. But I think a bigger part though is to really not be emotional, like Pasha said about a project, and it's hard to not be, right. There's a lot of, you get the jitters and you get the yips and the butterflies. That definitely is there. I still get them, but I think a good part of that is to be able to bounce it off of somebody and get a different perspective. I was using the analogy of, you're dating somebody and you're madly in love, and your friends are saying run, right. You may not have that perspective, and so to kind of ground you down, because there are times that you try to justify a project because you're in love with this thing.
For
It's just,
sure.
but then you
Yeah.
look at it where it's a doable project, but then when you look at it from a fiscal perspective, it may not. There's sometimes they just don't work,
Yeah.
because and the bigger part that scares me is a lot of the environmental stuff. Obviously, in the Portland area, we've got a whole lot of environmental stuff, and the environmental stuff doesn't have to be on your property. It could be properties that are adjacent that affect you.
Hmm.
And then a lot of the other ones that scare me are the transportation requirements when it comes to the on-site and off-site improvement requirements that come about when you're actually developing a piece of property. In some cases, just putting a house in,
Yeah.
which people don't think about, and then all of a sudden you go, "Oh, wait a minute, I got to resolve that answer," and now it's going to be extremely costly or take a whole lot of time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great to bounce it off. I always think that's a huge thing to do, because you could change your perspective. You could get, like I said, a little attached to it and not see what you need to see.
Yeah, and I think, just to unpack this a bit, I think that emotional component probably is what people prevents them from maybe jumping in or, kind of scratching that itch to get into real
Yep.
estate. So kind of really breaking it down, because for our listeners who, I think we've thrown a lot of stuff at them and just in terms of how big the space can be. Um,
Mm-hmm.
who do you see as being kind of your kind of key person who would come and reach out to you? Like,
Mm-hmm.
when would somebody like, who's just in exploring investing,
Yeah,
who is that person and why would they reach out to you?
that's a good question. I think starting at the beginning of knowing what you're really looking for. I see a lot of times where there is, um, uh, a search for too many ideas, and really paring that idea down, where you could spend your entire life just trying to find something based on such a large, kind of an ambiguous, large swath of really narrowing those down. um, as it comes to support of people, like in my daily life, I support people that can do one house on a lot, to guys that can support thousands of homes on a lot, and they still talk to me, right? A big part is that, what's that perspective? What do you see? Like I said, there's some subjectivity to that conversation, because I'll have a perspective based on kind of or opinion, which I'm highly opinionated sometimes, which I need to Pasha's seen that in my past working with me. But it really is. I always tell people, find something that you can wrap your head around in an area, a product that you can wrap your head around. I think a bigger challenge that we face in this marketplace, like I say, the finding the deal is the easy part. The hard part is figuring out how to pay for it.
Yeah.
And that's been a real challenge, especially with the tightening of the belt with the economy, the institutional lenders. As it comes, for example, we'll pick on, say, a small land division. Um, we call it the horizontal, the improvements, the sewer, water, storm, sidewalks, landscaping, all that fun stuff. Um, there's not a whole lot of money out there, at least when it comes to institutional lenders. There are private lenders, there are hard money lenders. There's those components out there. Um, the other thing that's a challenge is, especially when it comes to lending, is having a track record. And I
Hmm.
think that's some challenge for some people. They come in, they want to spend, borrow a few $1 million to develop a piece of property, um, and realize the lender goes, "Hey, all intentions are great, but where's your track record? Where's your history to get things
Yeah.
done?" Has been a challenge I find with people. Um, there are capital resources out there, um, but I always tell people, don't discourage people not to reach out. I have talked people out of deals.
Good.
Not really talk them out. I'll lead them to the answers and let them come to their own deduction. Obviously, like there's a subjectivity component to it, right? They've got to make that decision, but saying, okay, here are these challenges here, and here's
Mhm.
and they find that it doesn't meet their metric of time and expense and hassle and that things to get done.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is if you are new to this, it's really
Mhm.
doing your due diligence. And the due
Yes.
diligence is understanding one, what type of product you're looking for. Do you want to do maybe a small new development? Do you want to do a single
Mhm.
family, like your own residence? Do you want to just get the development and then have a built, hand it off and sell it to a builder?
Mhm.
The other component is definitely how are you going to finance it? There's a lot of complexity there. And as you mentioned, it's definitely not as freely out there in terms of lending from conventional institutional lenders. So you might have to look at more private money, hard money as options. Um, and then I think it's just the complexity of also the land and development itself. What are all the overlays? And that probably, you haven't touched on this yet, but we've talked about it as the jurisdictions. Every city has its own, set of rules and
Yep.
counties as well, and environmental rules. So, and that's
Yeah.
why I feel you are so valuable because you can really kind of help people navigate that. So, having you a partner in that. So, I think the biggest thing is like just my advice and hearing what you talk is just do your due diligence. Don't be afraid to lean in, and there's
Yep.
lots of opportunity out there. But if you are interested in new development or new construction, they're just find the right people to surround yourself with. So on that, Tim, talk a little bit about what's your kind of watch outs, and also what are your, maybe also too, what's some kind of green light opportunities that you would encourage people to pursue.
Absolutely. No, yeah, you touched on something that was great. Don't be afraid of it, right? When you're going through when you're dealing with the government agencies, they're just people that are trying to, uh, um, I'll use it loosely, help you navigate the process. Sometimes not so much. It just depends. And like Pasha said, it's interesting enough. If you look at the local ordinances, so when they've codified the local ordinance on the local level, there's no continuity between the zonings and how they're defined and how they're interpreted. Um, Even though they do come from derivatives of state laws and statutes and ordinances and things like that, it always kind of comes out a little differently. The recipe kind of comes out how they treat it, how they handle it. Um, you are going through a somewhat quasi judicial process. It's like a court process where you're submitting your findings, you are submitting what you want to do. They are then responding back, looking at the local laws and seeing how you do it. Um, what I see, what some people challenge do is they try to fit a square peg in a round hole. Right? They have an idea, but that zoning just does not support that. What their idea is, and they say, "Oh, well, just do a zone change." It's not that. It's not that simple, right? You've got, some jurisdictions you'll have to do an annexation and a zone change and bring those around, and the cost of that and timeline to that. Is it voter approved or non-voter approved? And like I said, the bigger part is looking specifically at that zoning that a jurisdiction has. Not only the zoning, but there's other rules attached around that. So it's not just a linear process. I always say it's like a layered cake. and you don't know what's in those layers until you kind of start digging through, and you realize that there's some frosting, some cake, but there's some rocks or sticks or dead animals, and you understand that there's every project, there's always something. There's
Hmm.
always some anomaly. You're always going to find something. It's either going to be a functional anomaly or some sort of dealing with a jurisdiction on the other end. I think when I say this all the time to the developer clients I support is, for example, I'll pick on middle housing. So middle housing came about with the house at the time she was House Speaker Tina Kotek put together this House bill called House Bill 2001. It's in 2019 that came about, and the theory behind House Bill 2001 was to, if we provide more housing, the price should go down. So kind of
Hmm.
supply demand model in that response. Um, and by basically bringing in a medium density into a single family zone where it wasn't allowed by law. Now the laws accept that. So you'll see where you'll have a big yard with a house, and now they're putting in either these cottage clusters or duplex, triplex, fourplex. They're trying to get that density there. There was some further legislation to kind of clean up the law, and the subsequent law to that, Senate Bill 458, was the allowed for the land divisions, because what was happening was everything had to be sold as condominium if it was intended for sale. So there's some components with lending on, not just the lending to get the project done, but also selling it on the back end. You have to have the owner occupied, the additional HOA fees and costs and layers to that, where you have a product type that's affordable, and
Hmm.
now you have these other layers of costs where you go, okay, now it's outpriced people. Um, Really taking, when you're going to take on a project, really having a good understanding of what you're dealing with on the municipality, because you can take the direction where you are driving the narrative or they drive the narrative. And there's times where you can do a little bit of both, but like for example, this middle housing, it's such a new piece of legislation. The jurisdictions, as they say, they're like building an airplane in flight. It's ever evolving, it's ever changing, and so um, when we can come into a municipality that has this, let's say this middle housing component, of really bringing them the solutions rather than kind of taking so some are just guessing how to do it because it's so new. The mechanics of it, the law is there, but the actual how do you implement it is not there. And so really understanding the process before you even get involved in that, it helps you drive the jurisdiction. It helps you drive your engineer. Surveying is pretty simple. There are times though that survey work can get pretty complex, especially when you're doing your existing condition map or design survey. Those can get pretty spendy if you got trees or some topography to there. Um, I mean, usually the process, if I were to go put my developer hat on, I would look at a piece of property and say, okay, what's the zoning? Where are my utilities? What are there any environmental constraints? Do I have any issues with being able to, it's called site distance, to be able to see where my driveway is? Can I have access where I want the access to be? What's the topographical issues, right? Do I have sewer up here and my lots are down here, or vice versa? Um, and then reaching out to my engineer partners and saying, okay, from an engineering perspective, what things do you see here? Can you give a guesstimate of what costs may be? Talking to the jurisdiction, looking at the data of density calculations. And the other side, the important part is what are my comparables? What's my data? What's the math that supports an area? Another thing, cautionary tale, is don't try to justify the pricing. The price is going to be the price is going to be the price. And I see people get in trouble because they go, you know what? It's going to cost me a lot to develop, but I'm going to sell $1 million homes in a market area that doesn't sell $1 million homes,
Yeah,
where
that's a
people
very good
pay,
point. Hmm.
can you get an appraisal? Can it meet the comparatives, right? Can
Yeah.
can can people wrap their head around buying $1 million house in a neighborhood that maybe would not support $1 million home? And that's just for an example, but that's where you're trying to make the deal happen and trying to justify the deal. But lean on partners. Don't, like I said, I've been doing this a long time, and I still lean on my partners.
Yeah.
It's an ever evolving industry, and like I say, I've been doing this over 30 years, and I still got questions, and I continue to, and even the jurisdictions do. That's a lot of conversations. We'll kind of scratch our heads and go, okay, how do we make this happen? Within the laws, and like Pasha said, don't be afraid of it. Step into it.
Yeah, there's
You
not
know,
a cookie cutter
no,
approach.
there's not at all, not at all.
Um, Well, I we need to have you back because I think you've tapped on so many different spokes to this conversation. You know, we could go down the road of zoning and middle housing legislation, and which I know is really a hot topic right now.
Mhm.
Um, but so just in the spirit of time, I just wanted to ask you one last question. And we're going to totally pivot. Is what advice would you give your younger self, knowing what you know now?
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, curveball.
Wow. I don't know, a couple ex-wives. No, kidding. Um, Pick your battles. And those if I tell my other side, yeah, you know what? Honestly, I've been, as I'm getting older, I've really been focusing in Pasha, I've had this conversation where it's important for me to share the knowledge I have to help family trees and legacies to kind of redirect and change. I think it's important to me as I'm getting older and looking at that eventually I'm going to time out. And just like my mentors, they're dying off, literally. And I'm going, wow, I'm next, not next, but it's coming.
We're the same age. You
Yeah,
don't.
yeah, exactly. But it goes quick. And you know, there's a quote by was it Wayne Gretzky? You make none of the shots you don't take, right? And really not being afraid to just stick it out there and see. There's times where I'll be working with people and we're working on a project and kind of helping them through the process, and we find it's a dead end. But I also remind them, hey, this was college. This was an education that you got for free and learn, and you take that knowledge and you apply. That's all I've
Absolutely.
done. I've done it a whole lot of times. So I've been able to aggregate knowledge that either I've dealt with getting my own tail stepped on, or people who I know have gotten their tail stepped on, or stories I've heard. But yeah, my younger self, I would say, don't be afraid of it. Um, uh, Take calculated risk. Um, don't put your families at risk to get something done.
Yeah.
Um, right? You don't want to take two steps backward and take a step forward. Um, be, when I was younger, not I was willing to listen and willing to learn, but be a sponge, be coachable. If this is something that you're getting into, um, you know, and I always have exit strategies.
Yeah.
You know, I've always said my favorite quotes in the A team: "You don't have a plan unless you got a backup plan." And looking at what's your plan to either if you've got to get out of the project for either financial reasons or health reasons or something happens, looking at those having an exit strategy at some certain point. Now that's an 8 hour conversation and just how to structure deals, and we could do that at a later date. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Let's.
like I said, don't be afraid of it. Take those calculated risks and put yourself out there, and continue to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I appreciate how much mentorship and advice you've given me as I've kind of
thank you,
explored some new development opportunities, and I just, I've been totally in awe of the level of knowledge and advice and
thank you.
expertise you have provided on my journey. So I just am excited for people to be able to also tap into that. So how can people find you, and what's the best way to contact you, Tim?
Sure. So like I said, I work for a title insurance company, Lawyers Title Insurance. We're a part of the FNF, Fidelity National Financial. It's a very, very big, I think Fortune
It is.
351 organization. It's nice because, I was actually a customer of Lawyers Title before they brought me in. And just the level of service I saw was kind of Nordstrom, which
Mhm.
my past life before getting real estate, I spent my time selling shirts and ties at Nordstrom. And so I really like that customer service aspect, which is kind of my expectation as a customer.
Yeah.
And found a point where I joined them. And so uh, my either through Pasha, if you can get a hold of Pasha, you can. Myself, you can reach out and Google my name, Tim Young Lawyers Title, and find it. I don't know. Are you giving phone numbers out there and
Yeah, throw
emails
out
out
your
there,
phone number,
Pasha?
please.
Okay. So my mobile number is 503-686-0548. And my email is tim.young@ltic.com. And reach out. There's no wrong answer. Either if you're a real estate broker or if you're a person who's working on wanting to do a project, reach out to a broker like Pasha that understands not only the real estate side of it, but also the real estate investment side of it. it's a little different. Residential resale, it's a feat in itself, but when you start stepping into real estate development, like I said, even down to the smaller scale of just building a house, can be a pretty daunting process.
Yeah.
But reach out. My bosses, their hope and expectation is that you've got to buy title insurance anyways. That you use us as a title insurance company that helps them keeping me on their payroll. But great group of people, Pasha. You've seen that
Yeah.
firsthand.
Sure.
Amazing group of people, and just like I said, from a customer service perspective, meet the criteria that I have, and I'm kind of hard to please sometimes. Um, but feel free. There's no dumb questions. Sometimes dumb answers, which I can give, but um, feel free to reach out. Like I said, I may not have all the answers, maybe, but I at least help you get in the right trajectory and where to go, rather than bang your head against the wall for a month. At least spend 5-10 minutes on a phone call and get in the direction of where to go. So, absolutely, yeah, I appreciate it.
Perfect.
It's nice being here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you, Tim. Like I said, I no doubt will have you back because again, there's just so many different splinters to this, and appreciate your time and bestowing us
Absolutely,
with some gems. So
absolutely, good to
thanks
be here.
for
Thanks for
raising the
having me.
bar together.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.